All right, everybody, welcome back to the Illuminated Podcast. We left off last time talking about metal season and different associations with metal season, kind of the basics, the nuts and bolts of metal season attributes. I hope you enjoyed that. Metal season is one of my favorites, and also it's asking a lot of us. And it requires, the mantra of metal is I surrender to transformation. And there's a lot that comes up when we're talking about surrendering to transformation. Because as I said last time, transformation is stepping into something completely new, completely different. It's not restoration. It's not going back to the way things were, where they were comfy and cozy. It's a whole new way of being. And that brings up a lot of resistance. And I have to say, I am having a shit ton of resistance myself about this episode today. We were talking about it before we started, and I am a mess about it. And it's probably going to be fine. But I've already told Cody, our glorious producer and one of my dearest friends ever, that if this is total garbage, we can throw it in the can and just walk away and act like it never happened. So you may or may not see this. You probably will. But resistance is a really real thing when we're talking about leaving the old and moving into a totally new space. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I just wanted to stop for a minute and pause and just offer the reminder about the confusion tolerance. Metal season in general is a little bit murky because we're coming into the underworld. We're coming into a place of our less than conscious, our subconscious, our unconscious, if that's what you want to talk about it as. There's that resistance. And so a lot of things are going to be happening outside of our, conscious awareness. A lot of things may not land right away. They may not sink in right away. You may not get it. You may get it. You may think you get it and then get more later. But all of it's okay. You don't need to get it. You don't need to know. You don't need to understand, and it's okay to be confused. It's important to hold space for that, especially when we're talking about these things that are sort of really on the edges and outside of our conscious awareness. And I think part of this process is just trusting that what you need to receive will be received the way that you need it to. And also having faith that everything else is being worked on by your higher self, your soul's wisdom, and the wisdom of your body, that soul, that body wisdom spirit that we talked about of metal last time. So everything's being received the way that it needs to, even if it's outside of your conscious awareness. So I just wanted to take a minute to pause to remind everybody about that. I am also reminding myself that it's okay if I if I feel like I don't make sense. I trust that what needs to come through is going to come through today. So on that note, we're talking about resistance, and specifically resistance to changing. There's a difference between that innate body wisdom that comes up when we're resistant to something that's dangerous, or to something that is coming up from our past that we may need extra support in. Those are not the things that we're talking about here. That's not the kind of resistance that we're talking about here. It's important when you have intense things coming up that you have support and that you have one-on-one support. So if that's something that's happening for you, reach out to a trusted practitioner that you know can guide you through it the way that you want to be guided through. But today we are talking about a very, introductory dip into the pond of resistance that comes up when we're talking about changing and transformation. So this whole thing about resistance comes up everywhere, all around the world, in every single culture. And some people call it the hero's journey. It's all of the myths and legends that we have where there's somebody slaying fire-breathing dragons or going up against an evil wizard, or the good versus evil archetypes that we have. I believe that it's not necessarily so resonant because, it's stirring some kind of memory of us slaying fire-breathing dragons or going up against an evil wizard. That may be true. There may be a part of us that is having a memory of that. But I think more often it feels so resonant, and it has, persisted for millennia all over the globe in every single different culture and country, because it's a mirror or a reflection of our own inner journeys. It's this reflection of our own resistance and our own inner wounds and our own inner darkness that that we are working against. A lot of times it can feel like we're working against, but really our relatedness to it doesn't have to be opposition. It can be actual relatedness and care and, working together with what's there for us in those darker areas, in the shadow. And I think that our resistance is sort of the first kind of bit of pressure that we come up against, the first obstacle that we come up against when we're moving into these places of shadow, when we're moving into the depths of ourselves, because it's scary down there. We don't know what's there. We don't know why it's in the shadows, but it's shadowy, and that can be scary. And so I think it's just important to start to have this, at least curiosity about the resistances being sacred guides, sacred messengers to the places that are asking for more attention and care. So that's kind of my thought about resistance and how it has shown up for us culturally, how it continues. I mean, look at how popular like the Marvel movies are, the superhero movies, or like Lord of the Rings. I love Lord of the Rings. I talk about it often, probably more than I should. But we all have this affinity for this, the good guy that's battling the dark or the scary or the less known or whatever. And it really is just a reflection of what we have within us and our own hero's journey that we're going through inside. So we're looking to, eventually at the end of this, we're going to be looking to how we can work with the resistance in a more supportive way that allows us to lean into and connect with, what's there for us in the shadow, as opposed to allowing the resistance to restrain us and restrict us and keep us stagnant and stuck, which can be an imbalance of metal energy. It tends to want to stagnate. And part of it is this resistance stuff that happens, this dance between resistance and surrender. So some of the ways that resistance can show up, I mean, it can look like anything, really. And it's wild how resistance will show up. For a lot of us, it can look like fear. It can look like distraction, like scrolling constantly, or, cleaning out your pantry instead of doing the outline for your podcast episode. That's also avoidance. Doing everything and anything except for the thing that you need to be doing. It can look like numbing. It can look like anger and irritation, lashing out at the people around us because we're feeling this inner friction building and building because we're not addressing it. It can look like clenching and grasping and rigidity in all kinds of ways. And there's a million different ways. There's a million other ways that I'm not going to list that resistance can show up. It's so individual, but those are just a few of the ways. So, and the thing about resistance is that the more we resist, what's coming up, the more intense it feels, the more things just kind of build and build and build. If you think about like a dam, for example, you're damming up all of this stuff and it's going to keep letting you know that it's there because that's its purpose. Our bodies have this wisdom, and our entire beings really have this wisdom that helps us utilize every single part of us. These bits that we're resisting, these shadowy bits, these wounded bits, these scary bits, are there in service to our wholeness. They help strengthen us and cultivate our character and our resilience. And when we don't acknowledge them and sit with them and open up a space for curiosity for what's there, they build and build and build, and more pressure happens and more heat can happen. And eventually, the wounds underneath the resistance and even the resistance themselves kind of become distorted. And we think that they are character flaws or that there's something wrong with us. And they also, in their distortion, become louder and louder. It's like a kid that's looking for attention any way they can. And they'll act out and keep amping it up and upping the ante until you're going to pay attention. And the same is with our wounds and our resistances. They're just asking for our care and attention because there's something there that makes us more whole. There's something there for us. There's treasure there. There's wisdom there. There's information about how to be more us there. But we tend to, numb it out, avoid it, shove it down, ignore it, berate it, you name it. We don't want to look at it. We do all kinds of crazy to not be present with our resistance. So today we're going to be a little present with our resistance, like I have to doing this episode about resistance. If I got to do it, you're going to do it. So first I thought it would be cool to talk about a few more attributes of metal, because it helps us understand metal energetics better. But also the attributes that we're talking about are available to us when our inner metal elements are in balance, when they're healthy and expressing themselves the way that they should. And these are a little bit different. Last time we talked about the seasonal associations and resonances. Those are kind of energetics that express themselves more outwardly in the physical, like nature, our physical bodies, different ways in the world. These attributes of metal are more psychological and emotional traits that express themselves in healthy metal. At the same time, though, these attributes have imbalanced, less healthy traits as well and expressions as well. So as I'm reading this list off, we're going to be thinking about, oh, that makes sense that this is part of metal's energy, but also thinking about the opposite expression of this attribute, how this would look if it's distorted, how this would look if it's unbalanced. So I'm going to quickly read these. And while I'm reading them, just notice when one of these attributes stirs something in your body. Notice when one of these attributes moves something some kind of way in your body. You don't have to spend too much time thinking about it. You don't have to be like, well, I wonder where that's from, or whose is that, or where is that from? Why am I feeling that? You don't need to do any of that. Just notice how it feels in your body, maybe where you feel it in your body, and just keep track of that. Okay, so here's a few other attributes of metal. Acceptance, non-attachment, acknowledgement, value, balance, sacredness, instinct, surrender, appreciation, awe, distillation, precision, purity, refinement, trust, respect, reverence, sensitivity, spaciousness, and faith. So just take notice of which ones of those stirred something in your body. If nothing came, that's okay too. Don't worry about that. But if something did move in your body, just make note of it. And when you have time later, maybe come back to that list and just get curious with it. Ask that attribute questions that'll help you get to know that attribute better, and that'll help you lean into any resistance that comes with that attribute. But for now, just notice it. That's it. Okay, let's take a breath on that. Lots of big stuff here. Okay. So I just want to talk a little bit more about resistance and kind of the radical inner honesty that's required when we're looking at our own resistance, and that when we're looking at our own shadow and blocks and things like that. It really does require this radical self-honesty. And to me, that has to include curiosity and care or compassion, some flavor of that. We're not going to beat ourselves up for feeling any kind of way. We're not going to beat ourselves up for anything that may or may not be coming up. We're just observing and allowing space and care and curiosity for whatever is coming up. Some more resistance. So resistance, and also too, I just wanted to offer this reminder that resistance happens because of forward movement, right? You think about like resistance on the front of a boat as it's slicing through the water, or on, the scoop of a snowplow as it's pushing through all of that ice and dirt and rock. And the more that's there, the more resistance is going to be there. The more density that's present, the more resistance is going to occur as you make that forward momentum. So resistance in itself is innately an indicator of growth, of forward movement. It's happening, even if it feels like you're going 10 steps backwards. Resistance happens as an indication that you're moving something. And that's good. As a practitioner of Chinese medicine, we're always trying to move something. And when we're talking about, going into the depths of ourselves and making space for getting to know our shadow and our wounds and our resistances, we want to feel resistance. It's important. It's an important indicator that we are actually onto something. So that being said, I want to kind of come back to the definition, or the dictionary definition of resistance. So I'm going to read off a couple of these and just kind of, let them land how they'll land. So resistance, noun, the act or power of resisting, opposing, or withstanding. The opposition offered by one thing, force, etc., to another. In electricity, a property of a conductor by virtue of which the passage of current is opposed, causing energy to be transformed into heat. In psychiatry, opposition to an attempt to bring repressed thoughts or feelings into consciousness. So when you have resistance to something, you know that there's something there for you that is asking for your attention. Pay attention to it. It's on purpose, for purpose, in service to your wholeness and to your thriving here, especially during these times of transformation. And the whole reason I'm talking about this is because not only are we in metal season, which is a massively transformative time, all about death and, giving ourselves over to something bigger than ourselves. But we are in that same space. This is a very metallic age that we're in right now. It's a very metallic moment that we're in as a species on the planet Earth. More resistance. And, I think it's very clear for most of us, I think probably for all of us here that are watching this, that we're in a moment of evolution and transformation. We are literally in this space where we can see everything that we knew crumbling. It's dissolving. It's dying. There's a lot of death grabs happening. And it looks crazy, and it will continue to look crazy for some time. There's resistance that's coming with that, right? There's always going to be resistance that comes from releasing something that was old and familiar and maybe comfortable, even if it wasn't really comfortable. There's always going to be resistance to that, even if we know that it's in service to our highest good. There's still going to be some resistance that comes, and there's treasure there. And we know that with all of this death and dying stuff, there's going to be some new, but we can't see it. And maybe sometimes we're like, are we going to make it into a new? Are we going to make it through this? It can feel like that sometimes. And there's going to be resistance there. So we're in this place collectively and individually where we're being asked to really fucking surrender in ways that we haven't done before, to really, trust fall into the void and wait for the new to come in. And so it's pulling on our resistances. We are having a lot of resistance, and I bet you've noticed it in yourself and or for sure other people around you. I definitely have. Okay. So we were talking about those metal associations earlier. Did you make a list of the ones that stirred something in your body that you felt a little something about? So just kind of come back to that and notice where you felt that in your body. Just notice it. Just spend a minute with it. Where did you feel that resistance in your body? We're just being curious. We're not excavating. We're not labeling. We're not judging. We're not fixing. We're not changing. We're just noticing. Noticing where we felt that resistance in our body and how it feels in there. Does it feel tight? Does it feel clenchy? Does it feel hot? How does that resistance feel in your body? Really let it be in there without trying to change it or shift it. Now, what if you let yourself feel that resistance and allow yourself to just consider for a second that that resistance is a guide, a sacred messenger, something there to show you where a part of you may be stuck or asking for your care. How is that feeling of resistance shifting in your body as you think about that concept that maybe the resistance has something to offer you? How does it make you feel in your body? How do you notice your muscle shifting as you consider your resistance being of service to you? How does it affect your breath? Does it make you feel more tight? Or does this idea of resistance as a sacred guide help you feel more softened and open and expansive? What if the more we lean into our resistance and give it space, the more the resistance softens and melts into a space of greater clarity, connection, and faith in our transformational process? And that is how we utilize our resistance. We lean into it. We lean into it and consider it as maybe something good for us. Maybe it is a sacred guide to where and how we can care for ourselves more. And leaning into that space and choosing to allow our consciousness to go into that space softens it. It makes it more malleable, just like fire to a metal sword. It softens it. So there we go. Remember that. Just that process alone, just the power of your consciousness reframing what your resistance may be, has the power to change everything. It's that little way in to working with your wounding and your shadow in a way that's supportive rather than keeping you stuck and stagnant. Okay, let's take a breath on that. This is big stuff that we're doing here. It's big stuff. And so it's important to take some breaths, not only because we're talking about very metallic energies and the lungs govern metal, but also, when we really breathe and let our diaphragm pull our lungs down deeper into our bodies, we're allowing the information that's so heady to come down into our being and become more integrated into our physicality. We're not just going to keep it here and stew about it and then let it go. We're really being with that feeling of the resistance softening. We're really being with the feeling of the resistance, doing what it does before it softens. And we're really being with the resistance and the feeling that happens in our bodies as it softens, because that's where the magic is, in our bodies. All right. So now we're going to talk about our metal season patterns in humanity. And there may be another metal season pattern in humanity. I'm not sure. We'll see where it all goes this season. But for now, we're going to talk about this particular pattern that I've been seeing since the first little glimmers and shimmers of metal season back in August. It's a big one. And we're seeing it in all the ways, in all the places, and all the people, and all the lands. And so it's another chunk about resistance. We're still staying with the resistance for the entirety of this episode, fortunately or unfortunately, as sweaty as it's making me. But this particular pattern in humanity that I've been seeing happening for months now, and I think we're going to continue to see for quite some time, is a resistance to the unknown. It's a resistance to not knowing. So we talked a little bit about metals' attributes before and how the attributes are available to us psychologically, emotionally, when whatever element is imbalanced. So in this context, we're talking about metal being in balance here, balanced and well. And that those attributes can become distorted and unbalanced and unwell, and they manifest in different ways. So some examples of metal attributes and their imbalance we see are value being an attribute, but distorted value can look like being unable to recognize our own worth. I have that one. We also can see the metal attribute of balance being distorted into extremism. Instinct being distorted and imbalanced into a sort of oppressive kind of logic. Surrender being distorted in collapse or even overly controlling or critical of self or others. Faith distorting into religious dogma or hollow hardness. But in the context of this resistance to not knowing, we're looking at metal's attribute of non-attachment becoming distorted and being overly attached to knowing. So the resistance to not knowing is distorted into being overly attached to knowing, being attached to what we think we know. And we are moving into a time, we're really already in a place where we don't know much about anything. We don't know who we are. We don't know where we're from. We don't know what we're doing here. We don't really know where here is. And we're deepening into that because everything that we thought we knew is being revealed as something different than we thought. It's crumbling, it's dying away, and it's dissolving, and we can't yet see what's coming. And so when that happens, people, understandably, we all do it, really cling to what they think they know. And so this particular metal season, we are definitely seeing this play out between surrender and resistance. This fighting for what we think we know, instead of just allowing that resistance, that need to know, instead of just allowing it to soften and be like, what if I don't know? What could be there for me if I don't know? And so, again, I just want to pause and remind ourselves, anchor ourselves into what we're talking about here. When I'm saying surrender, I'm not talking about like a weak, passive surrender of a type of giving up, but I'm talking about the active strength of trusting in something bigger than I can see, feel, hear, touch, think, imagine. I'm trusting in something greater than myself. That's the kind of surrender I'm talking about. It's not about, forfeiting or failing or being weak. True surrender is an incredibly courageous strength. And that's what I'm talking about here. It's the surrender to transformation, surrendering to the process, and having faith in where we're going, even when we can't see it. And again, resistance is, we're not talking about the resistance that comes when we're in danger or when we need more support, excavating some part of us or dealing with something within us or outside of us. We're not talking about that kind of resistance. We're not talking about the kind of resistance that is required when we are being asked to or apparently, seemingly forced to relinquish more of our sovereignty or our physical, mental, spiritual, emotional autonomy. We're not talking about that kind of resistance. Those are required for these times, and those will be challenged as well. But this resistance that we're talking about being with and allowing to soften as a sacred messenger is the resistance that again comes when we're talking about leaning into change and growth and transformation. So I hope you can feel the difference between the two in your field. The safety resistance is like a hard "you shall not pass." And the resistance to change and transformation sort of feels a little bit more shifty, a little bit more kind of trickstery. It sort of follows you around and moves you, and it's like, well, are you sure you don't want to clean out your pantry instead of doing your outline for your podcast episode? It looks like that. It's not a hard "you shall not pass." So I just wanted to take a minute again to distinguish between what we're talking about and what we're not talking about here. So back to this resistance to not knowing. This hyper attachment to what we think we know. Currently, again, as a collective and as individuals, we are in massive transformational times. And that requires this dying off and crumbling of the old. And all of the new that's coming, and the realization that we're not going into restoration mode. We are not going backwards. We can't. It's physically impossible to go back to the way things were. That's not why we came here. It is a transformational time, and there is massive resistance coming with that. The further we move into this crumbling of the old, the more chaos is going to be perceived. And the closer we come to the unknown. And this is where, the more I'm seeing so many grasping and clinging to what they think they know. So I bet you've already thought of some examples that we're seeing this collectively. Collectively, we're seeing this hyper attachment to knowing in spaces of religious dogma and extremism, or just religion in general. In politics, in the biohacking sphere of holistic communities. We're seeing it in the transhumanism movement, thinking that we as humans know better, and so should implant man-made devices onto and into our beings. Because we know better than the beings, we know better than our bodies. We're seeing it there. We're seeing it in science. We're seeing it in the spiritual community. We're seeing it everywhere. It's everywhere. This resistance to not knowing is everywhere. And individually, I've been seeing this in everyone, including myself. as it shows up in a whole bunch of different ways, right? We talked about that before, but specifically I'm seeing it in rigidity around beliefs, daily habits, ways of thinking, being, and moving, opinions about the way my life should be, and staying stuck because my life isn't what it should be. I'm seeing it in an unwillingness to see things from a different perspective because my ego believes I'm more advanced than the person holding the mirror up to me is. We're seeing it, and I'm saying me because I don't want to say names. You know who you are. But it's really, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. And I'm sure you've already seen it too. Another way of saying that one that I just said is this whole I'm more awake than you are thing. We're seeing it physically in body tension, tightness, chronic pain, stuckness of joints or, of momentum, excess mucus production, constipation, inability to sweat or release, a sort of holding our breath or inability to breathe or unwillingness to breathe, and a lack of personal and spiritual connection or feeling isolated and alone in the world and even in hopelessness. If you look at it, it's this resistance to not knowing. Because when we surrender to the unknown and trust in something bigger than ourselves, trust in the unfolding, trust in the process, this space comes in, this spaciousness, another attribute, balanced trait of metal, this spaciousness where there's infinite possibilities. All is possible in this space if we allow it. And so I, of course, am seeing this resistance to the unknown as an invitation to soften into and embrace the not knowing. Again, because there's infinite possibilities in that space. And as I've said, we're going to be here in this liminal space where there's so much formlessness and namelessness and there's only, shadowy, cloudy clues about what's next, about the new. We're going to be here in this liminal space for a while. Like I've said, we are rebuilding anew. We are watching everything we've known stop working and crumble and moving into a new that we don't know. We're going to be here for a while. Evolution takes time. Transformation takes time. And it should. So we're going to be here for a while. And so this is why I'm spending so much time talking about resistance, because there's so much here for us in this liminal space if we can just allow space for our resistance to be as they are, and maybe just consider that there's a sacred message there for us. There is something of value for us here in the unknown and here in the resistance. And so again, when you feel yourself being too attached to what you think you know, just pause. Take a breath. Give it some space. Remember to lean into and breathe with that resistance, with that need to know. Breathe into it. Feel it in your body. Until you feel it shift. Until you feel it allow you to come closer. You don't need to fight it. You don't need to fix it. You don't need to figure it out. Just stay with it. Sit next to it until you feel it soften. It will soften. That's the cool thing about caring about stuff. The more that you let it know that you care, the more it trusts you, the more it feels safe to be and to share all of its treasures. What could your resistance be showing you? Where is it guiding you? What precious treasure could be there for you in the not knowing if you just gave it a little bit of space to be sacred and rich with possibility? Let's take a breath on that. Woo-wee! We're cooking. Whew. Glad you guys can't see how sweaty I am. And apparently I'm keeping the blotches to a minimum. If you've known me for any amount of time, you know that I get real blotchy when I'm nervous or angry or happy or hot. Or if I've had something to drink, but I don't drink alcohol anymore. Okay, so you can shake that out a little bit. Shaking Qigong is a wonderful thing to help move big things and again bring it into our bodies and out of our heads so that we're actually integrating it and embodying this wisdom. Okay, so I want to shift gears a little bit. We're still going to talk about resistance, but we're going to talk about it in a different way. So I want to come back to another metal element or metal season association or resonance. And we're going to talk about food as medicine here. So we're going to come back to the flavor of metal, which is pungent. The flavor of metal element is pungent. And we're going to go a little bit deeper into physiologically what the pungent flavor does in our bodies. And we're going to look at it from a more psycho-spiritual, energetic perspective as well. So last time we talked about white foods being resonant and supportive for the metal element, specifically white nectarines, white peaches, apples, pears, cauliflower, parsnips, turnips, mushrooms, kohlrabi, white potatoes, garlic, onions, leeks, radishes, daikon, those kinds of things. Those are all white resonant foods. So those are in and of themselves are nourishing and supportive to the metal element. We also talked a little bit about the more pungent flavored foods helping to clear things out and open things up. But I really wanted to go deeper here, especially after all of this talk about resistance, because just as there's always a physical action of nutrients and food as medicine, there is also always an energetic and a psycho-spiritual component as well. So physically, the allium family, this more pungent flavored food that includes garlic, onions, leeks, and shallots. These are all, the allium family are all great sources of organic sulfur, which again physically binds to heavy metals that are in the body, either from inhalation, our lungs, absorbed through the skin, ingested through our mouths, and those heavy metals that are injected as well. So the sulfur in these pungent allium family foods binds to the heavy metals and allows them to be excreted via our poop through our large intestine. And the more pungent the smell and taste of a food means that there's more sulfur content, which means that it's going to be more cleansing for our bodies. So I just wanted to mention quickly that another important nutrient in alliums is quercetin, which is a highly anti-inflammatory antioxidant that I've found in my practice to be very helpful for many types of inflammatory conditions like allergies, arthritis, respiratory infections, autoimmunity, any kind of inflammatory condition, those foods are going to be helpful with. Garlic especially has massive benefits that we all may probably be aware of, and it works on so many different body systems, not just the lung and large intestine, but a ton of different body systems. One that is on the top of my mind is the cardiovascular system, but I'm going to stop myself there because I could go for days about garlic and there's so much information available on the internet about all of the really profound benefits of garlic. So I'll save it there. Other pungent herbs and spices include cloves, cardamom, nutmeg, cinnamon, chili, cayenne, ginger, black pepper, basil, rosemary, fennel, anise, and dill. And if you think about like garlic or ginger, for example, think about just smelling those. You can feel in your body the energetics of that pungent flavor. They move upward and outward. They help counteract metal's tendency to stagnate, if you see where I'm going here. So physiologically or physically, we recommend pungent flavors to help release the exterior. Say if you're catching a cold, you start to feel your skin kind of clam up, your your pores close and get kind of prickly, sweating may be inhibited. And we want to release things up and out so that things don't move deeper into the body. We want them to come out, up and out of the body, and the pungent flavor helps to do that. We call it perfusing the wei qi, or opening up our pores, our protective energy, opening up our immune system to push that stuff out. So we're encouraging sweating here as well to release things up and out, including stagnation and resistance. So psychospiritually, as I have hinted to, I personally believe that these pungent foods can help us move our resistances. Their spiciness helps to open up and expand and soften those hardened, rigid, stagnant, metallic, resistances and stucknesses. Just again, like I mentioned before, just as fire, we're talking about these spicy, pungent foods, just as fire softens metal. We call it controls metal in the Chinese medicine sort of life cycle. Fire controls metal. And really what control should have been translated to is ensures metal works better, works the way it should. Fire ensures metal works the way it should, rather than being too rigid, too stuck, and too hard. I hope that makes sense. So this upward and outward movement creates that spaciousness that I was talking about for us to lean into the resistance and to see it differently, to see it as a guide, to see it as a sacred messenger, versus allowing it to keep us stuck and blocked. It allows us to see the vastness of the unknown and the infinite potentials that are there. And I've not seen that talked about, so, take what resonates and leaves the rest. But for me, I know that as above, so below. What works in the physical is also working on the energetic and psychospiritual. So try it, see what happens. And one of my favorite ways, it's super simple recipe, one of my favorite ways to enjoy these pungent herbs, either if it's at the start of feeling some crud come on, if I feel a little tickle in my throat or my skin gets prickly, or if I feel like my terrain's a little bit bogged down and I need to kind of clear some stuff out. Or if I'm feeling super stagnant and rigid, it's just a quick, easy recipe for a drink. So usually I'll add a clove of garlic grated straight into my mug. Clove of garlic. I'll add an inch or so of ginger grated straight into my mug. I'll slice up a green onion, especially the whites of the green onion, and fill my cup with bone broth that I've warmed, in a pot on the stove. Little bit of some good salt for extra electrolytes, and I just sip on that. It's delicious. You can feel it opening things up. You will probably sweat a little bit. And I'm not talking about like dripping sweat unless that's what your body needs to do, and it will. But just, that nice crystalline sheen of some sweat as you kind of release what needs to be released. And that's my favorite way to use these pungent herbs, but there's a million different pungent herbs and foods that we talked about that can be used in a whole bunch of different ways. That one's just my favorite quick and easy way to use them. Okay, so that's it for today. As we talked about here, and this is probably one of those episodes that you may want to come back and watch multiple times. You may want to take notes if that's your thing. This is some big stuff here. We've moved some really potent energy in our time together today. And so remember that if you feel tired or like you need a nap, or like you just want to go outside and lay in the sun, or you need to do some shaking qigong in your yard and just shake it out, or if you need to go for a walk, or dance it out. Dancing it out is a favorite. But just, remember that you have moved a lot today, and to allow yourself to process accordingly. Drink plenty of water. Stay hydrated. Water, tea is even better. Whatever your hydration method of choice, stay hydrated. Let it move through you. Eat some good food, some good grounding, nourishing soups and stews. And come back to it as you need to. This is going to be here for you, so you can come back to it as you need. And also, any emotions that come up in the hours and days and weeks after this episode, let them breathe. Let them be as they are. Don't try to fix them. Don't try to change them. You don't need to analyze them unless, that's where you're at in your journey and you have the support of somebody that can help you, kind of move through that and process that if that's what you need. But we moved a lot. And so a lot is going to be moving through you, whether you're consciously aware of it or not. Give yourself some grace and space around that. And so again, we are looking at resistance as a friend, as a sacred guide to how we can attend to ourselves better, how we can know ourselves better, and then move through these transformational times with more rootedness and peace and stability within ourselves, because, in change, things are swirling in chaos. There's nothing firm, nothing solid to anchor into except for ourselves and our center. And this ability, it's really like a muscle that we're cultivating here. This ability to be with what comes for us and really be with it and really care about it and create space for it is how we truly transform. It's not by shoving it aside or denying it or avoiding it. It's by leaning into it, sitting with it until it shifts, until it shows us a way in. So, thank you so much for hanging in with us. This was a big one for me today. I didn't want to record this episode, but hopefully it's helpful and hopefully it inspires you to see things in a new way. So, thanks so much for joining us. Don't forget to check us out on Instagram, Dr. Heather Jones. We're going to share recipes and more insights as we go, so don't forget to follow us there. Please like this video if you enjoyed it or found it valuable. And again, thank you so much for being here and holding space during this sacred process with us. It wouldn't be the same without you. So thanks again. We'll see you next time.